Hello, everyone. Now 29. Hello. Yeah, you can use the chat. Hello, Jordi. Hello. Hello, Irene. We have 32 now, 33. Hello, Angel. We'll wait a little bit. Perfect. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Ariadna. I'm the coordinator of the London chapter of the Alumni Association of ESADE Business School. This is a co-organized event between ESADE alumni and the Spanish Chamber of Commerce in the UK. And this initiative is the first step of a relationship between both organizations. And I hope that we can collaborate more in the future. Now I would like to introduce you to Hannah Sanders, who is the representative of the Spanish Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you very much, Ariadna. Good afternoon, everybody. And on behalf of the Spanish Chamber of Commerce in the UK, thank you very much for joining us for this session, which we are delighted to be partnering with our member ESADE Alumni Association for. As our guest speaker for today, we are delighted to be joined by Professor Oscar Torres, who is the Director of B2B Management Programme at ESADE Executive Education, as well as holding the position of the President of the IMAVE B2B, which is Spain's B2B Marketing and Sales Association. Having also founded the B2B consultancy group Just B2B, Oscar is well versed in change management strategies involving overhauling B2B companies, enabling them to develop business which is easy to predict. So Oscar is going to be discussing in depth his recent study, which featured in Forbes, titled B2B, How to Lead Your Company's Growth Strategy, while he'll also be sharing his insight on how to understand and to thrive in the new business context that we're all finding ourselves in. So now, without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Oscar.
Thank you, Hannah. I don't know if you can see me. I hope you can see me. First of all, I want to thank you to the Spanish Chamber of Commerce in the UK and to ESADE alumni for inviting me to share the evolution of this Forbes article I wrote in December that was basically focused on reflecting on how you can build your growth strategy for a B2B company. But I think now it's much more about how we reboot this B2B growth strategy. So if we look back to 2008, the crisis we had at that time was quite different compared to the crisis today, which is quite systemic. The reality is that this crisis, it's affecting to all kinds of systems in our society, in our economy, in the way we have relationships between companies and between employees and so on. So COVID is really going to really redefine the way we work with each other. So in this webinar, I'm trying to cover like the two key elements as a good news, because these days all these webinars are so kind of negative of the situation. I think I can share with you some good news about the things you have to consider to really reboot your growth strategy specifically for a B2B company, right? The first concept I'm going to share with you, it's going to be related to the fact that the B2B relationships require a specific management model for this type of companies. And the second element, which is going to be together with this management model, is the culture that you need to reinforce to really become very successful in business-to-business relationships. So if you consider these two elements, you're really going to make a difference in the marketplace. So to start a little introduction, so I've been working like the last 20 years on the fact, working on the difference, how different is B2B relationships compared to B2C business, right? So reflecting on that, my biggest conclusion was that at the end of the day, when you have two companies working with each other, what is really, really different between selling software, selling a professional service, selling machinery, selling a biotech, it's going to be the fact that the buyer pays with companies' money, and this makes the buyer, this C-level person, to really measure the risk of trusting us. So trust is going to be a very important topic. And think about these days, if you are really able to handle under control your capability to generate trust, it's going to be a very powerful way to compete in this new ecosystem, in this new context, right? The second concept is that we don't want to do business. We want to do better, predictable, and scalable. And the three go together. It's hard to be predictable if you don't really know how to do a good business. Better business for me is not selling more. Better business is to sell to the clients you want, the ones that you are willing to learn about this industry that is it has a high potential, with the margin you want and with the type of relationship you want. Once you know how to do that, then you're getting closer to become more predictable, and both together it's going to help you to scale up, right? So in some way, my very pragmatic theory is that if you want to achieve a better, predictable, and scalable revenue, this will normally happen if you are organized for that. So it's going to be an organizational outcome, right? So for that, I truly believe that in many cases, B2B companies, they don't recognize what are the key elements that, from a management point of view, they have to be considered in their companies. Because they work with companies and they don't work with consumers, right? The first element that I was covering in this Forbes magazine article from December was that as a general concept, everybody in the company, but the CEO, the general manager, all the executives, they need to understand that in B2B, we are in the people business. What's the meaning of that? I put over the table like years ago this concept of the B2B mix, okay? It's kind of challenging the concept of the marketing mix, which for me, it's 1000% B2C oriented. The product, the price, the place, the promotion, all these terms are so relevant for a yogurt, for an iPhone. But for B2B relationships, it's three things that they are really going to be relevant. The first thing is going to be relevant is not that much the product, but it's going to be the solution that it's really fixing a specific problem. Think about this situation in a factory when the operations manager gets an email from health department saying that probably your employees, they are breathing the wrong thing, right? When this manager is looking for a solution, is not going to deep dive on the features and functions of this mask, but is going to look for how I can fix it, right? So the first element of my B2B mix is going to be not the product, but the solution, not the brand, but the company behind. So here, what is really going to be relevant is how powerful is your company, how credible is your company, how trustable is your company to really mitigate this risk of the decision maker. And the last but not least, over 50%, over 50% of the executives I've been asking for the last 10, 15 years, they considered that one key element was the people that they were engaging with them from the supplier point of view. So you don't sell products, you sell people. And this is going to be something very relevant in these days. The second element is understanding the relationship as a process. The relationship means the selling process and the buying process. The selling process, how do I approach the client? The buying process is how they learn that they have an issue, how they move from unconscious and competent to conscious and competent, and how we help them to realize that they have this issue, right? The third element is having the right amount of data to manage our sales team. Normally, we manage sales people with impressions, right? Normally, we manage sales people mainly with lagging KPIs, right? With information about revenue or closing the month or looking back, right? But what is the right data that we need to have in hand to be able to really monitor how people it's growing up, how my team is really going to develop their skills for future revenue, right? So normally this third element, it's something that it's missing in B2B companies, and it's really affecting to their capability to be predictable. Number four is that 90% of the marketers in a B2B company, they have a B2C mindset. So they have been educated on the marketing mix, they have been educated on the product, on the price, on the place, on the promotion. And once again, nobody buys anything because you make a promotion in B2B unless it's crystal clear that this fixes an issue and they can justify why they took the decision to sign this order. So marketing in B2B should be something different. Marketing has to. I remember when I was in my 20 years ago, I was hired to scale up one American software company here in Europe, and I remember telling to my marketing manager, telling to this person, I just need that you help me to prove that I'm not lying to my clients. So their duty is to don't believe me. So I have to create. You have to help me to create proofs of value that when I approach a company, they really understand that I can deliver the value that I'm offering to them, right? The fifth element is that every single person in the company understand that we don't sell products, but we sell contextual value. If we are able to build a system that allows us to understand their context, we will be really able to provide real value, and this will be a kind of mindset or mantra in a B2B company. So at the end of the day, 5 elements that if you take 1 out of 5, it doesn't work. It's an holistic view that that from a CEO point of view, from a general management point of view, requires that the company gets organized to produce to have these 5 elements together properly to produce this better, scalable, and predictable revenue, right? Once you cover this part, which is basically what I was covering in the Forbes magazine article in December, and do it to the situation, I have some good news for you. And the thing is that when you try to implement this management model for B2B companies, that I cover in the B2B management program that I lead in the SCALABLE Business School. Normally, one of the reactions of the CEOs attending to my program is, "Wow, this means I have to change a bunch of things, right?" And as our friend Peter Drucker used to say, culture eats a strategy for breakfast, which is a very negative view of culture, right? I prefer to reposition this concept and say that strategy defines the why, so why we're going to apply this management model for B2B companies, and culture enable it, right? So if we know that culture is so important, so probably it's better to understand how culture can help to you. So today, in these days, if you are really able to fine-tune your culture, your behavior, this is going to be very beneficial for your business, right? So if we think about the culture as a concept, culture is talking about behavior, mindset, and social patterns, right? And if you think about the culture of a company, I love this sentence from Dr. Sepa, which is saying, okay, culture at the end of the day is the people you have, right? The ones you hire, the ones you promoted, the ones you fire. I like to add the people leaving you, right? Because that's an indication of the culture they don't like. This is why they are leaving you. But on top of that, I think the culture is it's absolutely related to the one leading the company. Whatever is the culture of this person leading a company, this is going to be the culture of the company, right? Because at the end of the day, people get inspired by the social patterns that those leading the companies, they are communicating to us, right? They don't communicate, but they tell us with their actions, right? So I really want to connect the situation we are facing in the world with the fact that if you are able to really reflect on the B2B culture that your company has, on top of this B2B management model that I'm presenting to you, I think that this is going to really give you a very pragmatic approach to really compete in this situation, to really be different compared to the crowd out there, right? So let's start from the beginning, right? What do we really sell in B2B? For me, I think it was a quite clear introduction that trust is going to be relevant, right? So how can we create trust, and how we can measure trust, and how can we be precise with this trust, right? The first thing, if you take this formula that it was included in the Trusted Advisor, this formula is telling to the way to measure trust is you increase trust when you are credible. Okay, I'm telling you white and it's white. I'm telling you black and it's black. People think that you are trustable if you have reliability. You tell the client, okay, I'll be there on Tuesday 8:15, and the worst case you are there Tuesday 8:15. And the last element of increasing trust is going to be intimacy. So I'm able to share something with somebody, and I know that they are not going to use in a different context or to play games with me, right? What is going to decrease trust for sure is to be egoist, right? So let's think about this B2B culture concept that I'm bringing over the table. Let me tell you this situation, right? I was like years ago, like 2-3 years ago, I was with my kid in Paris, so right, and I was in the museum, in the museum, Orsay Museum. And we were in front of this this landscape from Van Gogh, and I said to my kid, "Okay, wow, that's a Van Gogh." And my kid said, with this humble approach and genuine approach of kids, right? My kid said, "Daddy, it's just a landscape." And I said, "No, come on, it's a Van Gogh, right?" And he said, "How do you know?" And I said to him, "Is because the details, the little details, are making the difference." So culture, B2B culture is exactly the same. These little details makes the difference, and it's little details in behavior and mindset, okay? So let's think about, if you are trying to become credible and your approach is because you are an expert of your product, compare this way to try to become credible with the fact that you try to become credible, looking like an expert in the problem, right? As this picture is trying to inspire you, people don't buy 5mm drill, people buy 5mm hole, right? So how can we increase our trust and our credibility, moving away from being egoist and selfish, talking about my product, and trying to talk about the problems that I solve, right? Reliability, how we can increase reliability, how we can how we are going to communicate reliability to our clients, perhaps with sense of urgency, perhaps during the minutes of the meeting in the parking of the client. So you are leaving this interaction with the client, and in 15 minutes, this prospect is going to get the minutes of the meeting of our conversation and our agreement. And I don't care that you cannot do visits today on site, but you can do it 10 minutes after the Zoom. Okay, so what is the message that we are going to communicate to the client, to the future, to the potential client, if our team is behaving like that in terms of trust, right? Intimacy. So what happens if I have the chance to double check first with my contact the presentation I'm going to do to his boss, and instead that I present to the boss directly. So how I built a relationship of intimacy, sharing first what I have prepared for the boss with my contact, which is going to validate, and suddenly it's not going to be my presentation anymore, but it's going to be the presentation of both, right? Or the opposite, right? How we decrease trust by being egoist, right? This situation where the client is almost telling to you, you only write to me when you need to renew the contract, right? So once again, at the end of the day, it's about these little details in the Van Gogh paint, right? About behavior, right? And in many cases, they come from mindsets. They just come from a specific mindset that has been built in the mind of the employee, thanks to the culture of the leader, right? I really like this acronym, right, that I built 1,000 years ago, 20 years ago, when I was leading this channel. I was building the channel, and I was leading the channel, and the sellers and the sales managers and the channel owners. And this concept here was like how I can propose something if I don't understand, and how I can understand if I didn't listen, and how I can listen if I don't make questions, right? So it's ALOP stands for ask to listen to understand, understand to propose. Like it's like a mantra. Do you really think that the seller is going to take the decision to be like that because you send them to a sales training? Lucky you. You better implement the right B2B culture in your company that reinforce the right mindset, that will reinforce the right behavior, like the 90-10, right? 90-10 is just scoring how much you talk compared to how much you listen and how many questions you do, right? 90% listening and 10% questioning. Okay, in the program I manage at the SADE Business School, B2B management, which is mainly focused to MDs, to business owners, to CEOs, and to VP of sales. I remember once I had one attendee that 6 months after I organized what I call the B2B club. So people comes back to present the implementation of those concepts in their companies. And in this case, I had Ansho. Ansho was leading a startup, and Ansho was taking this slide, which I dedicate like 2 seconds in the program. And Ansho said, I implemented the 90-10 concept in the culture in my company, right? So now the sellers, they have to self-assess after a visit if they were listening 90% and questioning 10%. This little detail, it's purely the fact that this founder of this startup was really understanding that this was relevant, culturally speaking, for the business, and this mindset that he captured, he was translating this mindset in a stupid, simple tool to drive behavior, right? I still remember the first visit I did in my first sales call I did in my life. I'm quite a strange animal because I was like 10 years in the industry, mainly in B2C. Everybody has a past. I was even 2 years expat in China. And when I returned back in Spain, I decided to move to the software industry, that they value my understanding of the field and the understanding of the client side, right? So the first time I went to do a sales call with my mentor, this guy said to me, "You listen, you shut up," right? So 6 months ago, I was a purchasing director for 6 months in an automotive company, and right now I was there listening, and then I was like self-controlling and to don't speak, you know, Latin people will like to speak. But I was like quiet listening. The guy, my mentor, was really doing 90-10, and then we finished. It was a very nice 2 hours sales call. We learned a lot about the context of the client, and then it was 1 p.m. They said, "Do you want? We cross the street. We go lunch, fast lunch. If you want to join, you join." Right. So like in 20 minutes after we started the lunch, I didn't control myself anymore. And I made a comment about when I was living in China, right? And I saw my boss looking laterally to me, and I thought, okay, this is not going to be this was not a good idea. Make this comment, right? So when we jump into the cab, my boss took my arm, and the guy said, the next time you open your mouth to talk about your life, I cut your legs. And automatically he was smiling, right? But culturally, he was educating me about the fact that you should not consume time in front of your clients in a way that doesn't contribute to understand their context to help to them. So these little details are really, really, really related to culture. And culture, it will be implemented by the leaders of the company. And changing culture, it's hard bottom up, but it's quite simple in certain cases, like now, top down, right? Another concept, if everybody understands that selling is helping, this is going to be a great win, right? Let me give you another example. So like a year ago, I was interviewing one of these sellers I had like 10 years ago. And I was interviewing, in fact, I was interviewing the best seller I had at that time, the first one out of 50. And I was asking to this person, so tell me, why do you like selling? And the guy was saying, yeah, because at the end of the day, it's helping, right? You go there, you understand the situation, you have the vision of how this could be fixed, and you propose a solution. And this has a great satisfaction. So I tell to this person, give me an example, right? And then he was describing a case of a company, and a small company, 12 employees, right? But don't forget that over 90% of the companies in the world, they are small companies. So we love small companies, right? And the guy said, yeah, I was there once. I talked to the owner of the company, of these 12 employees, little factory producing this, distributing this orthopedic things, right? And the biggest concern of the CEO was, I think that I'm going to lose the distribution of those orthopedic things that I've been distributing for 3 generations in my family, right? And the seller was asking to the guy, but do you know about orthopedics? Oh yeah, sure. We've been doing that for 3 generations in my family. We are really very good because we are very close from the field. We really understand the doctors, the people dressing these things and so on. And then the seller said, why you don't create your own engineering department, even one guy, and I can provide some software to you, and then you will become independent to the distribution. What this seller confessed to me was that 6 months after, he returned back to the company, and the CEO confirmed to him that they lost the distribution. So from this point of view, you need to understand that this mindset, it will never be the mindset, the isolated mindset of one seller. It will be the mindset like that if the CEO, the general manager has the same mindset, and we really push for this kind of culture, right? Another concept. So many people think that selling is about it's talking about product or being very expert in my own thing, in my own product. So I always understood that selling was an intellectual effort. So once I decide that I want to target one segment, one industry, I deep dive on the context of this segment, on the common business issues of this segment, and then I approach the first account, and then I do land and expand. So once you have one deal, you are able to capitalize this learning, and you go to get the other similar cases, that the other similar companies that they have similar problems. Why this is so important? Because when you consider selling as an intellectual effort of understanding a problem and providing a solution, suddenly you are not waiting for business to come to knock your door. And when crisis came to the economy, to the systems, then you have more capabilities to become more free and to generate the pipeline you really want, right? Another concept is that having a culture that is telling to you that the answer to almost everything it's in the field, talking to people, okay? So having this culture that we really reinforce that the people executes and stay in the field, neither in internal meetings or in internal analysis, but observing how we talk to clients, we talk to their to them when they use our products, our solutions, our services, and so on, right? Another important topic is that everybody in the company understands that we have to build a system that reinforce this B2B culture. I'm just going to give you an example just to finish, right? Every single time I was leaving an account, my sales, my country manager was asking to me, what is the pain of this account? When a sales manager is asking to the seller in a systematic way, what is the pain instead of how much we are going to sell, the message that we are giving, the message that we are giving to the seller is that first you try to find the problem, and after let's try to sell something. This is going to be cultural, and it's going to be very relevant these days, because if you are willing to help, if you are focused on their situation, if you are willing to understand based on asking and listening, you will be able to propose something which is going to be super powerful compared to be transactional. Don't forget that in this situation, the people that your sellers are going to approach, they are in transactional thinking. They are trying to survive for the day, and we cannot play the same game if we want to make them think about, right? So in summary, you need to reflect on the fact that B2B companies, we do a different thing. I'm sure it's funny because we have done 14 editions of my program in ESADE with over 300 attendees, top managers attending to the program, and most of them they conclude that they were always sometimes disappointed about how B2C oriented are many business schools in the world, where 90% of the cases that they discuss, they are about iPhones or beers or yogurts, right? So the point here is that you have to really deep dive on the things that are really different between B2B relationships and B2C relationships, and you need to reflect on which is the management model. And these are my 5 key elements that you cannot choose one or two. You need to holistically consider how they fit together to make you more strong from a management model point of view. And the second element is that at the end of the day, we have to be very clear about what is the role of everybody around revenue, right? So sellers have to sell, for sure. Sellers need to know how to do the work, how to go there, how to get the appointment, how to, sure, okay? But don't delegate revenue to sellers. I would strongly, I would never delegate revenue to sellers. You need to be, as a CEO, you have to be really concerned about, you have to be the first one concerned about how do you generate revenue, right? The second topic is sales managers. The only thing that they have to do is make sellers, okay? The best seller is not the best sales manager. The best sales manager is the one enjoying making sellers. And the role of the CEO is to do 2 things: implementing the B2B management model, and for sure, in this situation, reinforcing the B2B culture that is going to help to you to minimize the sense of risk and to contribute with trust that is going to help to those decision makers to feel very good working with you and for you to make a difference in this competitive environment. Okay. With that, you will be able to align your organization to produce better, predictable, and scalable revenue. For sure, a comment here about the program I lead in SCALABLE, which in July we do the virtual international edition that we can send you more information. And now, which is the best part for me, I'm going to open for questions. Hannah, I don't know if we have. I'm going to stop sharing. Whatever you need, you will have my email. So you just need to ask to Hannah or the guys at the SADE alumni. I'm going to stop sharing, so then I can see if we have. I see we have a bunch of questions, right?
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much for that, Oscar. Just one to start us off that's come in. So one of our listeners has asked, what could happen if we don't have these conditions that you've spoken about in your talk?
What could happen if you don't have the management model in a normal situation is that you lose good business. You start selling to those accounts that you don't know why you work with them, and you don't make the margin you want. You never have the predictability of the business, and for sure you are not able to scale. I would say that this could be the answer in October last year. Today, if you don't have this B2B management model that I was sharing with you, and you don't reinforce this culture, you can close your company. So people nowadays, the people you talk nowadays, they are not going to accept any lack of precision in generating this trust. So we have to really be very careful how we generate this trust, because this will minimize the risk willing to work with us. Yep.
Okay, that's great, thank you. Another question that we've been asked is, obviously you've spoken quite generally about, companies with their B2B strategies. Are there any exceptions to the kinds of company or business that what you've spoken about applies to?
I would say that my message is quite general. Though if we have some people in the listening that you are from a startup, for instance, when you think about the B2B mix, where we said it's not about the product, but it's about the solution. It's not about the brand, but it's about the company, and for sure it's about the people. For a startup, the company side is very, very weak. So they know that you're in a startup. So this is going. They in many cases they discount that. So for a startup, to work on the credibility, reliability of the solution is very important. But for sure, normally you do a new product, so you still need to prove a lot, right? So what is missing? What is going to be really relevant? You need to work like hell in the people business. You really need to build a team that works very, very well. These trust. And they are credible and high level of reliability and high level of intimacy and so on. If you take, for instance, another example, if you take a small and middle business with another size, I think that those companies, they can be very powerful, building, doing a reorientation of their culture. What does it mean? If you are a large corporation, changing turning your culture is going to be super hard. If you're in a smaller company and you are the owner or you are in the management team of this smaller company, it's going to be quite simple to wake up in the morning and take the decision as an owner, as a CEO, as an MD, that you start making questions to the sellers about what is the pain that they have discovered in these accounts. So I would say that perhaps these two could be something representative to answer the question.
Okay, great, thank you. Another question that an anonymous attendee has asked is how can we work in the field in the new norm of remote working? And does it mean do you mean to say remote fields?
For me, this is the field. Okay.
Okay.
So I think I never did webinars till COVID, because at the end of the day, I'm not an academic, I'm a practitioner, right? So I'm sharing my 20 years of experience in B2B models, in B2B channels, in B2B selling, helping my partners to build and to scale up their companies, plus the over 400 attendees that we have had in ESADE, in the B2B management program, right? But you can change the context, but you still have real life relationships where you have a chance to Zoom or to have a webinar, and in this webinar, one-to-one, you will be credible, you will be reliable, you will build intimacy or not. And so I think that in a positive way, being very, very pragmatic, I think that we are winning a lot of efficiency. Think about how many sales calls your sellers they were able to do before, and how many sales calls your sellers they are able to do today. And I'm not that concerned about the quantity, but I'm truly concerned about the quality and how you can inspect what you expect, right? So I think that the field has changed, but we still have the concept there, which is don't hide yourself in internal meetings, in talking about your product, and doing recovery plans. Go there and talk to your clients. I was like 3-4 weeks ago, I wanted to paint something in my house in the weekend. So I remember I had a student that he was the CEO of a paint company, and I called to the guy, could you sell me some paint? And he said, sure, what do you need? So how I can help you, right? And at the end, he was asking to me, Oscar, so do you have any advice? I don't know, if you explain to me the situation. So how many clients do you have? 3,000. How many alive clients do you have? How many you make business normally? 800. Okay. So how many sellers? 10 sellers. Okay. So how many out of the 800 did you call the last 2-3 weeks just to know how they are? How many of those clients you call them to understand their new context? How are you going to offer value if the context has changed to everybody, and you didn't remeasure the context? And the guy said, okay, so this means that I need to call the 800. I would call the 800 for sure. Yeah. So I think the field culture is just the concept. So don't run away from bureaucracy, run away from analysis by paralysis, and go to the field. Try to understand the new context of your client and try to help them after understanding the situation.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks a lot. Another question that's come in is, what is your advice for a two-sided marketplace startup that is looking for companies to join the platform? And what should be the approach for the big key accounts if your startup doesn't have a reputation? How do we convince them of a solution?
That's very good. The other day I was doing a webinar specifically for startups, and I was trying to get ready for that. I was reading an article from a great organization based in Madrid called Empresa y Sociedad, that they are very, very focused on B2B startups, mainly B2B scale-ups, right? And they do every year they do a B2B awards, and to select the awarded scale-ups, they have a pipeline of over 100 B2B scale-ups, and these guys, before the award, they were interviewing these scale-ups, right? And they were sharing the conclusions of those surveys, and one of the conclusions was that these scale-ups, they strongly prefer to approach the innovation department in big corporations, and makes kind of a lot of sense, because if you're in a startup or in a scale-up, probably you're approaching the market with some very new innovative solution, right, to perhaps problems that they are still unknown. And those departments that they are in their transactional execution, probably they are not going to pay attention to something which is innovative and out of scope. But if you approach an innovation department in a large company, probably they are going to pay attention to this innovation. I think that's a very insightful detail, right? And after, once again, don't forget that people buy from people they like and they trust. So for sure, it's a weakness that nobody knows your company. But sometimes the fact that you have a great team with the right B2B culture, it's going to have an incredible impact over the decision maker willing to work with you, compared to willing to work with another great company with a fantastic solution, but perhaps the quality of the people business is not going to be that high. So you really need to work in your culture.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you. Another question that we've had is, as a mid-level executive in a large corporation with a set culture, what would be the best way to drive this message across to the wider organization?
Okay, that's a great one. I think that culture is super tough to implement bottom up, but you still can create an island. I mean, you can create an island and protect your little culture below you, okay? The thing is that if I have to be really, if I have to tell you the truth, the reality is the B2B client will realize the full culture. It's going to enjoy your culture, but one day, I used to say, let me play with this analogy, right? When you buy an iPhone, you don't get married with Steve Jobs, okay? When you buy a product, you don't need to engage with the management in the company of this B2C company. It's a product-based relationship. When you buy my software, your professional service, or your biotech, whatever, and there is a B2B engagement, B2B relationship, you're buying the solution, but you're buying the relationship for the future. Because if something fails, you need to know where you're going to, where you have to go to find a solution. So in many cases, we have this, mainly the technical people, right? Or those people that they truly believe they are so proud about their product, right? Believing that in B2B, what they buy, it's the product, it's like a little bit naive. At the end of the day, they buy the solution, the company, and the people around. And those people around your department with this great culture that you try to build in your department, one day or another, they are going to be exposed to these clients. I mean, if you sell machinery, one day or another, your Chinese client is going to be exposed to the factory, to the manager of your factory. And you better have a great B2B culture, and the factory manager really understands as well this B2B culture. So this one was a tough one because it's a common one. Educate your CEO.
That was a very good answer. It was very explicit, so thank you very much. Okay, a final question that we've received is, what about B2B selling? When your final business client is not a one-to-one selling process, but you're addressing hundreds or thousands of businesses with your services or products. You don't have those one-to-one conversation options in those cases to hear about their specific difficulties. So what do you think should be done in those instances?
I don't know if I really understand the question, but I'm going to assume that you mean that the ticket is very small, and then you have to offer to the crowd When the transaction is like very small, then there is a level where you can, there is a certain ticket size that it doesn't allow to have a field salesperson or a person that is going to tailor-made understand the context. Okay, then you have different solutions. One of the solutions is to start decreasing the amount of effort that you do to understand the context. Okay, so instead having somebody which is going to deep dive to understand your desert, to offer the water by visiting you, by deep diving in your situation, perhaps there is no visit anymore. Okay, like today, right? But there is not a lot of conversation. It's something faster, right? And then we end up with this broad. It's very broad, I know. When I'm going to say that, everybody's going to understand a different thing. But then we land into this inside sales concept, okay? Which I think I found like 7 types of definitions in the world. But at the end of the day, is being very sure that makes sense to send somebody to interact with the client, right? And then if you go to even a smaller ticket, you can try to do that without inside seller. You have to try to do that with the right marketing tools that helps to you to nurture your education about your level of problem in your context, and after educate to you how you can fix it and how you can fix it with me to finally agree to buy, right? So depending on the ticket price, the sales effort is going to be higher or lower, and consequently you're going to have less reward, and then you will have to have more volume.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you so much, Oscar. Well, that's all the questions we have had. So I just want to say thank you so much. Your insight was really useful and really interesting, I'm sure, as well, for everyone who participated today. So thank you. And yeah, from the Spanish Chamber of Commerce, we're really pleased to have collaborated with yourself and with ESADE Alumni Organisation for this webinar today. So I'm just going to hand over now to Ariadna, just to wrap things up.
Thank you very much, Hannah. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you very much, Hannah, for this opportunity. And of course, to you, Oscar, for your insights that are always brilliant. And thank you, everyone, for being here today. Now you will find a survey that it will be great if you could fill it, so we will be able to know your opinion about this event, and also about your suggestions for future events. Thank you very much, and we hope to see you very soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.